Hanukkah Sameach to everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, a couple more people walking in. Does everyone who wants a source sheet have a source sheet? And the spares, thank you, and the spares are there. Okay. Okay, Hanukkah Sameach to everyone. It is lovely to be here with you all learning about Hanukkah on Hanukkah, which I was thinking is actually quite a rare occasion, because usually the Yomei are before the Chag, with the Shalosh Regalim, the Yom Noraim, we have the Yom before the Chag in preparation of. So it's really actually very special to be here today on Hanukkah with all of you learning about Hanukkah. For any of you who were in my Yom Yun in Elul before Rosh Hashanah, our main focus was on trying to see if there is any connection between the mitzvah of the day and the historic event being commemorated on the day. And through that analysis, we were trying to see what is the deeper meaning of the Chag. So today I want to do a similar thing. I want to analyze the mitzvah of candle lighting, which is our mitzvah of Hanukkah, and see how it can relate to the historic events of the Hanukkah story, and also have a little bit of analysis of the name of Hanukkah itself. You know, what's in a name? What do we learn about Hanukkah from the name Hanukkah itself? So that's what we'll be doing today. So without further ado, let's start by looking at what exactly is the mitzvah of Hanukkah. We see in source 1, so this is from Masechet Shabbat. After we have a discussion about Hilchot Nerot Shabbat, after we discuss details of the candles that we light on Shabbat, we sort of segue very neatly into a discussion about the Hanukkah candles. So we have here, Tana Rabbanan, we learn in a Braita, Mitzvat Chanukah Ner Ish Uveto. The mitzvah of Hanukkah is to light a candle for yourself and your household. Ner Ish Uveto, one candle for the person and his household. Then it carries on, Vahamahadrin, Ner L'chol Echad Ve'echad. If you want to go up a level and make it an even more special mitzvah, so what you can do is each member of the family themselves can light a ner. Vahamahadrin min hamahadrin, and the best level possible. Beit Shammai omrim Yom Rishon madlik shmona mikan ve'elech pochet v'holech. And then we have the famous debate. The opinion of Beit Shammai is on the first day light 8, and on each subsequent day go down in the number of candles you're going to light. Or Beit Hillel omrim, Beit Hillel says the opposite. Yom Rishon madlik achat mikan ve'elech mosif v'holech. On the first day just light 1, and on each subsequent day add on the number of candles to parallel the day of Hanukkah, which it is. Now, because it is a widespread custom throughout all Jewish communities, actually quite surprisingly that there seems to be sort of unanimous agreement on what we do in practice. We are very, very used to doing the Mahadrin min Mahadrin, the top level, that we light 1 candle on the first day, according to Beit Hillel, 2 candles on the second day, 3 candles on the third day, etc., etc. But let's not forget, what I want to focus on at the moment is this basic level. Me'ekar hadin, what is the mitzvah? What is the basic level to fulfill the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles?
1 candle per day.
Absolutely, 1 candle, ner ish uveto, that we should light this candle for the whole household. And interestingly, again, despite the fact that the common custom is that we do the Mahadrin min Mahadrin, the halachot do reflect the fact that the basic level of the mitzvah of candle lighting is 1 candle for the whole household. So, for example, the Rambam, when he says what is the basic level of the mitzvah of Ner Hanukkah, makes very, very clear that we know it's Ner Ish Uveto, this candle for the whole household. Then he goes on to detail the other levels. There is also, the Shulchan Aruch says that when we have lit Hanukkah candles, we should then sing all together Hanerot Halalu, etc. And the Mishnah Berurah there says, when should we start singing it? We should start singing it after the very first candle, because that first candle is the candle that is the main fulfillment of the mitzvah. It's the basic fulfillment of the mitzvah. So we have Ner Shavuot, an obligation on the person to light a candle for their whole household. And it's quite clear that there's a connection between the lighting of the candles and the house itself.
Prior to the brachot.
Sorry?
Prior to the brachot.
Well, we make the brachot, we say the brachot, then light the candle. And at that juncture, he's saying after the very first candle, regardless of what day of Hanukkah it is, you start singing. So we have this connection between the candles and the house. And accordingly, there is an interesting halacha that if somebody is outside of the home at the time of candle lighting, then they can rely on lighting being done in the home by a member of their household. So let's see this inside. We have in source 2, also in Masachet Shabbat, Amar Rav Sheshet, Achsanai Chayav B'ner Chanukah. We have this principle that a guest at someone else's house is Chayav in Ner Chanukah. Amar Rabbi Zera. So now Rabbi Zera is saying, what happened to him, when he was a yeshiva student? What did he do? Meresh ki hevena beirav mishtatafna bifrite bahade ushpiza. When I was a yeshiva student, so I wasn't home for candle lighting. If I was at their house, I participated in their candle lighting. If I was at someone else's house, I participated in their candle lighting. How did I do that? I gave them a pruta, I gave them a nominal amount of money, and by doing so, I was joining in with their household. But then he goes on to say, Batar din sevi itata amena, but now I am married, I'll say, hashtavadai lot tzrichna. I definitely don't need to do this anymore. Because there is someone, a member of my household, lighting on my behalf. So again, we see somebody who is outside of the house. It's preferable for them to have somebody lighting on their behalf in their house rather than do it on one's own behalf outside of the home. And we can see this very intrinsic relationship between Hanukkah candles and the house in many other halachot. For example, there is no obligation to light Hanukkah candles in shul. We do customarily light Hanukkah candles in shul. This is mostly, it's a very lovely custom, because if we understand the beginnings, the origins of lighting the menorah came from the Bet HaMikdash, then in our shuls, in our Mikdash Ma'at, it's very nice to, in a parallel fashion, light the Chanukiah. But there is no obligation halachically to light in shul because it is the communal space. But the real obligation of candle lighting is to be done in each and every household, in each and every private home. And we also see this connection in various other halachot. So for example, the Chacham Tzvi, who is Rav Tzvi Hirsch from the 1600s, he asks this question: what is the difference between candle lighting and the reading of the Megillah, of Megillat Esther on Purim? Because we know that a katan, a minor, somebody who's under bar mitzvah, cannot read Megillat Esther in shul and through their reading fulfill the obligation on everyone else's behalf. We need somebody over bar mitzvah to read the Megillah. However, he says, the Chacham Tzvi says, a katan, a minor, who's a member of the household, can light on behalf of this household. And why is there a difference? So he goes on to explain, we have the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah, and it's a mitzvah on each and every individual to hear the Megillah. In similar fashion, I would say, as Kiddush, we are all, each one of us, obligated in Kiddush on Shabbat. Yes, one member of the household stands up and says Kiddush, but they are fulfilling the obligation on everyone else's behalf. Through the mechanism of Shomea Ka'oneh, we say as the listeners are as if they are saying it themselves. So everybody, through one person's saying the Kiddush, fulfills their obligation in Kiddush. And similarly, in Shul, we stand up, the brachot are said, and the person's reading of the Megillah is fulfilling everybody's individual obligation in Mikra Megillah. But he says it's not exactly the same with the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, because Ner Chanukah is rather a mitzvah on the whole household. Ner Ishuv Veitot, to have one candle lit in this home. And therefore, this minor child, someone obviously who's come to the age of chinuch, but let's say we take an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old, they haven't yet reached bar mitzvah, but they are a member of the household, and therefore they can, in the same way as any other member of the household, light for this household. And so we see that there's this intrinsic link between Ner Chanukah and the house. And why is this so? We don't have it with any other mitzvah. You can eat matzah on Pesach in anyone else's house, at anyone else's seder. You can shake the lulav wherever it's most convenient for you. And we read the Megillah, we hear the shofar blasts in Shul with the whole community. Why is there such an intrinsic link between Hanukkah candles and the private Jewish home? So perhaps the mitzvah of lighting candles is so intrinsically linked to the home because this is exactly what was threatened by the Greek army. Amongst the harsh decrees that they imposed on the Jewish people was an attempt to directly undermine the Jewish home itself. And we can read how the Midrash describes it in source 3. It's my source 3. My source 3. Okay, in source 3, apologies, there's no English here. Amdu v'gazru. So amongst their decrees, they stood up and they decreed, Shekol ben Yisrael, that any Jew, she'oselo bariach or masker lepitcho, who would make a lock or a bolt for his house, yidaker b'cherev, should immediately be put to death. What was so bad about putting a bolt or a lock on your front door? V'kol kach lama, why was this such a point of contention? Kedei shelo yeh Yisrael kavod v'lo reshut, because the Greeks wanted to ensure that Yisrael, that the Jews should have no honor and privacy, no self-respect. Shekol bayit she'en lo delet, because any house that does not have a door, en lo kavod v'lo tzniut. It has no honor, self-respect, it has no privacy, it has no modesty. And so they were intent upon making sure that each Jewish home should not have its self-worth, its self-respect, its privacy. Does this remind anyone of anything? Any other story, anything else in Tanakh?
Passover, the door.
Okay, the entrance of the Jewish home. That's so lovely. I'm not going in that direction, but we do have the Petach HaBayit and the Chanukiah at the Petach HaBayit. We do have that connection. Any other story in Tanakh where there is an attempt to really undermine the essence of the Jewish people, and in particular their privacy and the modesty of the Jewish home?
I mean, the Tanakh tells way later there's lots of stories in terms of the taking of Jewish wives before they were married. Or
Okay, we're going in that direction. I think we can see that the Greeks clearly saw what Bilam Harasha had seen many years previously. That even as he tried to curse Am Yisrael on his mission from Balak, he blessed them with a beautiful blessing, and he said, "Ma tovu ohalecha Yisrael mishkanotecha." Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How good are your tents and your dwelling places, Yisrael? And he marveled at the beauty and the privacy of each Jewish home. He then went on to devise a cunning plan, and he suggested to Balak that this time perhaps they should send the women of Midian to try and seduce the Jewish men, and in this way undermine their great value and the uniqueness of each Jewish home. And they succeeded. They sent the Midianite women. They did succeed in seducing the Jewish men. And it led to a huge failing and plague amongst the Jewish people, with many, primarily from Shevet Shimon, being wiped out. And the same idea we can see in the Greek decrees, because they insisted that each new bride, Jewish bride, should have to be with an army general before she could even get to her chuppah. But the Maccabim stood up and fought valiantly, and they realized that they were not under physical threat, but rather, additionally, and perhaps more importantly, they were also under spiritual threat. And they would not let the Greeks and the Greek ideology penetrate the doors of the Jewish homes. And therefore, likewise in parallel fashion, this is the way we celebrate on Hanukkah. In the words of the Tzitz Eliezer, we have in source 4, Kav'u lezecher shebachol bayit Yehudi yadliku ner Hanukkah ish uveito. Therefore, how do we celebrate such a miraculous defeat and a salvation from all these harsh decrees? Well, in a parallel fashion, that in each and every Jewish home, we will light this Ner Hanukkah, each one with his household, לסמל בזה החזרת העטרה ליושנה של איחוי ואיחוד התא המשפחתי הישראלי. To symbolize through this candle lighting the return of the splendor of the Jewish home and the salvation of this nuclear family unit of the Jewish home. This idea also helps us understand a famous debate between Rashi and Tosafot as to where exactly the Chanukiah should be placed. So we have, in source 5, we have a very seemingly straightforward description of where the Chanukiah should be placed. It says in Masechet Shabbat, Tanu Rabbanan, Ner Chanukah mitzvah lahanicha al petach beito mibachutz. One should place the Chanukiah at the entrance of one's home outside. But it's unclear as to what exactly this intends. Petach beito mibachutz, at the entrance of one's home on the outside. So Rashi explains that we should place the Chanukiah at the entrance of one's home. At the outside entrance, I would say, of the house. But Tosafot says, if you have a house with a courtyard outside of it, then one should place the Chanukiah at the entrance of the courtyard, along the border which borders the Reshut HaRabim, the public domain, so that every passerby can see this Chanukiah. And therefore, we see that they've interpreted Mipetach Beito Mibachutz in a slightly different fashion, because if you have a house with this yard outside of it, or a common area outside of it with other houses, Tosafot will say put the Chanukiah at the front, as at the border with the Reshut HaRabim, the public domain, whereas Rashi will say put it at the entrance of your house on the outside. Now, we have this famous idea associated with Hanukkah candles, which we're all familiar with, of Persume Nissa, of publicizing the miracle. And it has ramifications for a lot of different halachot regarding the maximum height that one can place the Chanukiah, regarding the ideal time of lighting the Hanukkah candles. A lot of the halachot and the details relating to Ner Hanukkah are based on this idea of Persume Nissa, of publicizing the miracle. So therefore, I can easily explain the opinion of Tosafot that I should place the Chanukiah at the entrance of the courtyard as it is bordering with the public domain, so that anyone passing by will see the Hanukkah candles, will be reminded of the miracle of the Hanukkah story. But perhaps it's harder to explain Rashi's position that I should place the Chanukiah at the entrance of my house, which in many cases could be in a further setback position. So I think now we can explain Rashi's position, because we can explain that we want the Chanukiah to be placed at the front of the house, because what we are celebrating is the salvation of each and every Jewish home. We want the candles to be shining from the home, because we are grateful that we managed to fight and defend the values which we hold so dear in each and every one of our Jewish homes. There's a very interesting halacha which relates to somebody who's not home one day of Hanukkah, and there's not going to be a possibility for them to light their Hanukkah candles at home that day. If this person passes by and they see someone else lighting the Hanukkah candles, they see another Chanukiah, as they see the Chanukiah, they should make a bracha. I haven't brought this on the source sheet, but it says, V'Rav Yirmiyah Amar, Hara'eh ner Chanukah tzarich levarech. Someone in this specific situation who sees a Chanukiah should make a bracha. We do not have this with any other mitzvah. This is really an anomalous situation. We are used to somebody making a bracha on our behalf. We brought the example of Kiddush before, but not of this phenomena that we see somebody else performing a mitzvah. They may be totally unaware of our presence, and we make a bracha on their mitzvah. So why should we make this bracha on seeing the Hanukkah candles in someone else's home? Because we make this bracha just by witnessing these Hanukkah candles burning in someone else's home. We make the bracha because we've seen the result of the salvation from the danger that each and every family unit and Jewish home was in. And we make the bracha simply because we see this Jewish home performing the mitzvot and surviving and flourishing and spreading its values.
That's something that people love here in Israel, because you could be saying bracha.
Only if you're in a situation where you're not going to be able to light. It's a very specific situation.
In Galut, it's not a common occurrence.
No, absolutely. Even in Galut, it's a very specific situation. Somebody's outside of the home, and there's also no member of the household in the home, and for whatever reason, they are not going to have an opportunity to light Hanukkah candles that day at all. Also not a member of their household on their behalf. So if there is this specific person and they go around and see someone else's Hanukkah, they make the bracha on that. Yes?
So you're walking down the street and a dozen people are doing it outside. Can you say it too many times?
No. As I said, only if you're not going to be lighting that day, right, or no one in your household is going to be lighting. You're saying this specific person, should they say it more than once?
If they're walking down the street, they're not going to be home. Really just the first time?
I don't think more than once, yeah. Because you yourself would never say a bracha more than once, right?
For those people that are women, I know my house, my husband usually does it. So if I saw I would be able to say it.
No, because the lighting in our home is absolutely fulfilling our obligation of Hanukkah candles. No, not upon witnessing someone else's, because you, I'm sure, fortunately every day are either at home or members of the household are at home saying the brachot and lighting the Hanukkah candles in your house. And just as a very quick tangent, although it's definitely a topic for its own share, women are obligated in Hanukkah candles. Mishum afhen hayu ba'ota nes. They also were in the nes, and therefore it's one of the 3 times in the Gemara for Hanukkah candles, for Mikra, Megillah, and Arba Kosot that this phrase is used. Afhen hayu ba'ota nes. They were also part of the miracle, and therefore, although you can say, well, it's mitzvah tasei shazman grama. No, because similar, I would say, I'll put it this way. We just said that Ner Ish Uveito, the mitzvah of Hanukkah candles, is one on behalf of the whole household. So the woman, the wife, the children, everyone is part of the whole household. So one person lighting fulfills the obligation on behalf of everyone else. Now, in some people's household, children do light, every member of the household lights, in others they do not. Typically it's a split between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim, but there are many variations of the minhag. So you'll go to someone's house with however many children, and only the father, let's say, is lighting. The wife and the children are not lighting. Everyone is fulfilling their obligation through one person's lighting. easily, no problem whatsoever. Your husband's out of the house, you light Hanukkah candles. There's, even if he's in the house, but I'm saying your custom is that he lights, no problem whatsoever, but the woman is obligated, and her obligation is fulfilled by any other member of the household lighting the Hanukkah candles.
And can you change it? Like sometimes the woman can actually light and sometimes not. Would you not like say whatever you're doing, that's when that happens?
It's a really good question. It's to do with if you change your minhag slightly, does that really need hatarat nedarim, etc., etc. I don't know it exactly. I think if it's always been one member of the household, maybe strictly you need hatarat nedarim if you want to change the minhag. It's definitely permissible for any member of the household to light, but equally the current minhag that someone has is totally valid also. Yes.
Why should you not be able to add to it?
This is not how situation war would not be practiced for the women and the men to do it together, to sing together. Sing together for Hallel and a Mao sword.
No, can't see any problem whatsoever.
Okay, you're not home, you're walking down the street, we're in Israel, and you see a Hanukkah at the door.
Yes.
Can you say a blessing there?
No, because the idea behind the specific halakha is that you have no opportunity that night.
It has to be exactly the same time that person, you observe someone saying the bracha?
No, it's not to do with the time. Even if you pass at the moment that they're saying the bracha and they're lighting it, but you're on your way home, an hour later you're going to light.
No, if you're not home.
If you're not home, then in this specific situation, upon witnessing someone else's Hanukkah, you make the bracha. It doesn't have to be at the moment that they're lighting it.
So, but the fact that it's lit and
Yes.
people are lit,
Yes.
it's just
Yes.
Yes. Say a bracha over that.
Yes, I believe so. Yes, and it's a very unique mitzvah, and we've explored the idea of it. So these values, which we've been talking about, the values that you see reflected in the Jewish home by the Jewish candles that have been lit. Yes.
The husband usually lights the Hanukkah candles, but he's not home to light on time. He's at work. And the wife is at home. Should the wife light the Hanukkah candles and then he says the bracha on the lit?
It's a really, really good question, because there is an ideal time to light the Hanukkah candles. I think if someone is shortly coming home, it's customary for people to wait. There's no problem lighting, half an hour later, an hour later. Discussions about, when is the latest time to light, reflect whether there is anyone awake anymore. We're talking about at the dead of night. If someone's coming home at 3 a.m, then I doubt the whole family would wait for them to light Hanukkah candles. If someone's coming home shortly, definitely it's customary and it's a reasonable thing to do to wait that everyone lights together, all members of the household. Yeah. But as I said, the members who are there at the time earlier, let's say they don't expect him home soon and they light, when he does come home, absolutely, their lighting has fulfilled his obligation of Hanukkah candles.
So he's not.
Sorry.
Complicated question. Someone's traveling. He's in the area. There's a time difference. His family is wherever, and they want to light on time. They can be mekabel for him.
Yeah.
Think about it at that time, even though it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon for him.
Yeah, it's one of those very, very difficult questions. I mean, you can have all of these in the air questions in one shared together.
Because by the time he comes home, maybe it's too late.
Absolutely. Their lighting obviously fulfills their obligation. Whether it fulfills his obligation, maybe depends on different factors and how far away he is and the time difference at that moment in time. But if he somehow, by being in the air, misses his opportunity to light anywhere at any ideal time, then their candle lighting will be for him. Okay, so if we move on now, we've been discussing primarily with this last very specific halakha that what we are really celebrating is the Jewish home flourishing with its values that we are so grateful that we managed to fight for and to protect. And these values pass down from generation to generation. And we see the strength of the Jewish home and its values in many stories in Tanakh. Perhaps none more so than in the whole saga of Yosef, which is read in these weeks in Shul in the Parshiot leading up to Hanukkah, and indeed on Shabbat Hanukkah. So we have Yosef, who is 17 when he is sold by his own flesh and blood. And first they throw him into a pit, then upon Yehuda's urging, they take him out of the pit and they sell him to a band of peddlers who happen to be passing by. He changes hands several times and eventually lands up in Egypt. And upon his arrival in Egypt, he's sold to Potiphar. And he becomes a servant in Potiphar's house. From the moment that he arrives in Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife takes a liking to Yosef and she attempts to seduce him. And time again, she attempts to seduce him and Yosef refuses her advances. Now, remember, he's in a very vulnerable situation here. He is young, full of desire, alone in a foreign country, and yet he keeps his firm resolve until one fateful day. And we read in the Psukim, source 6, Vayehi kahayom hazeh, and it was on that particular day, perhaps by careful calculation of Potiphar's wife, Vayavo habayta, and Yosef comes home la'asot melachto, to do his work. Ve'en ish me'anshei habayit sham babayit, and there is no one else from the members of the household there at home. I'm just continuing to source 7. Vatit pesehu bevigdo lemor, and Potiphar's wife grabs him by his outer garment and she says, Shechvayni, lie with me. Vaya'azov bigdo biyada, he leaves this outer garment in her hand, vayanach vayaseh achutza, and he flees the scene. He runs outside. Now, if we look again at the very first of these psukim that I read, there is a glaring repetition of the word bayit in this description. We have 3 times the word bayit repeated. And he came home. La'asot melachto. Ve'en ish me'anshei habayit, and there was no one from the members of this household, sham babayit, the 3rd time, there at home. Now we have a very interesting machloket as to how to interpret the words la'asot melachto that we read in the pasuk. Rashi brings this machloket between Rav and Shmuel. So you can see in source 8, what do they say? La'asot melachto, what does it mean he came home to do his work? Chad amar melachto mamash. One opinion says literally his melacha. He came home to do literally his work, to do his chores, to tick off his list. V'chad amar la'asot tzrachav imav. One opinion is that melachta is a euphemism for Yosef's decision to finally give in to her advances. Ela sheniret lo dmut diukano shel aviv. But then suddenly there flashes before him this image of his father. He is at this moment in time, according to one opinion, about to finally give in to temptation, and suddenly there flashes before his eyes this image of Yaakov Avinu, his father, and it strengthens his resolve. And then the pasuk continues as if nothing has happened. And he flees the scene, he runs outside. And Tosfot explains what's behind this idea, what's behind this opinion that this is what was going through his mind and suddenly the image of his father flashes before him. Well, the pasuk says, Ve'en ish me'anshei habayit, there was no one from the members of the household there. But the Midrash reads into it, implied that there was someone else there. There was someone from another bayit. There was someone from another house, another home. And this was Yaakov Avinu. And Yaakov Avinu, with all the messages that he had taught Yosef in their household, was present within him there. and the strength that he could derive from the values of Yaakov and his household rose up within him at that moment in time and gave him the strength to run from the scene.
I thought someone mentioned that perhaps he walked by a mirror and he saw his face and he looked very much like Yaakov.
Absolutely.
And that reminded him.
Absolutely. We do have this idea found somewhere. I cannot remember the source of that. One opinion is that what is this? What's the reading into this Diukano Shel Aviv? He was going past a mirror, and in his reflection, he felt the presence of his father because of the similarity in their faces. But again, the idea is the same. He was similar to him perhaps in looks, but also in values. He sees his father and he remembers the lessons and the messages that his father has imparted to him.
The father actually be a metaphor for God.
It could be. I haven't seen that anywhere. But you know, Aviv Bashamayim, it's a lovely message also. You know, he was really struggling there, and then he got this strength from, no, this is not what my Father in heaven wants. No.
Also, isn't Yaakov also associated with being inside of the mind and the Shiva?
Absolutely.
Instead of the field?
Absolutely, very, very much so. Yaakov Yoshev Ohalim, very, very much so. There are it's interesting analysis also to look at where Ohel is used in Tanakh and where Bayit is used in Tanakh, and there are differences. But it is really true. He was a family man, as we'd say nowadays. You know, he was in the home, and the home mattered to him, and his household mattered to him, and this is where it bore fruit.
Just always the two places of life, where we are at a certain point in time or life, and hide where we came from, where we got our values. That stays with us. It's like
not just a physical house, but the home.
The home.
And the principles of it.
Yeah, absolutely, very, very much so. Yeah, very, very much so. His conscience that was affected by his home. And in this moment of truth, it all comes flooding back to him. Now, yes, of course.
I'm sorry, in the Chumash that I read for that Parsha, the stone edition, it said that the wife of Potiphar actually had very positive reasons for what she was doing, because I don't know how she knew that that children from her would be associated with Yosef, and they said that Yosef actually marries her daughter.
Ah, okay. Oh, snap. Okay, interesting. Always nice to cast a positive gloss on. Now, what's interesting is that following this scenario, Potiphar's wife deceitfully accuses Yosef. Oh, thank you. She deceitfully accuses Yosef of her very own actions. So what does she do? She's basically caught red-handed. Everybody comes home and sees her standing there with his garment in her hand. And so she accuses him, and what words does she use? It's very interesting. Did I bring it? Source 9. Source 10, okay, if we look at source 10 together, Vatikra la'anshe beita, so as they come home, what does she tell them? Vatomer lahem lemor, ru'u hevi lanu ish ivri letzachek banu. We have this ish ivri amongst us, and look what he's tried to do to me. Now, he's not the first person to be coined ish ivri. Who is known as ish ivri? Anyone else? Avraham. Avram HaIvri is specifically stated previously already in the Pasuk, and the Midrash there explains why was he given this title, why is he given this name. It reflects the fact that everybody else is on one side and he is standing on the other side, and he is able to stand against popular opinion. He's able to stand against the flow, and so too Yosef here had the ability to stand against the flow of popular opinion or action. And where did he get the strength from? He drew upon the values which he had benefited from in his home. values which we get in our home are referred to as chinuch. Chinuch is a word that goes beyond a basic academic education which we receive, and it really relates to inherent values, moral lessons, etc. that we wish to impart to others. And chinuch is derived from the same root, the same shoresh as Chanukah. Chet, Nun, Chaf are the root letters of chinuch and Chanukah. Now, usually if we say, what can we explain from the name of Chanukah? We say it's called Chanukah because of Chanukat HaMikdash, Chanukat HaBayit. There was a rededication of the Bayit. There was a rededication, a reconsecration of the Bet HaMikdash. They cleaned it up, it had been defiled, they purified everything, etc., etc. And it was like a reconsecration of the Mikdash. But now we have this connection between chinuch, the root letters of chinuch and Chanukah. What can we see in this connection? So where do we find the root of chinuch in the Torah? If you look at source 11, I'm just plucking a phrase out of this pasuk. It says, Mi ha'ish asher bana vayit chadash v'lo chanacha. Is there someone who's built a house and hasn't dedicated it? And Rashi there, on the word, v'lo chanacha, it's not such a common word. He's explaining, what does it mean? V'lo darbo, Rashi says in source 12, well, has someone built a house and hasn't even had a chance yet to live in it, to dwell in it? Chinuch l'shon hatchala. And he says here, chinuch is an expression, it's a term that is related to a beginning, hatchala. So we can see in this pasuk, in this example, that we are very, very much at the beginning of this new house which has been built, and we haven't even managed to have an opportunity to live in it. But clearly, you wouldn't describe every type of beginning of new start in life with the term chinuch. So if we look into it a little bit further, we have another use of the word chinuch. Now, many parashiot before, in Sefer Bereshit, we have in source 13, this pasuk, Vayishma Avram, ki nishba achiv, he hears that Lot has been captured. And he quickly gets together all the chanichav, we're not sure how to translate it, and he gets together all the members of his household and he starts pursuing after the fighting nations so that he can save his nephew Lot. So Rashi on the word chanichav there says, Chancho ktiv ze Eliezer shechincho lemitzvot. We can translate this word as somebody who he has educated, he's trained in mitzvot, namely Eliezer. V'hu lashon, and now he's trying to explain to us a general understanding of the word chinuch. V'hu lashon hatchalat knisat ha'adam. It's an expression of the beginning of entering someone, or kli la'omanut, or something, shehu atid la'amod ba. The beginning, the start of a training process for someone or something for a mission that they're going to have to do, a role that they're going to have to fulfill in the future. And so we have here sort of a more specific understanding. What exactly is chinuch? The beginning of what? It's the beginning of someone that you've set them on the path for something that they are, getting ready to do in the future. He brings a few examples. He says, V'chen, another time that we hear this shoresh of chinuch is chanoch lena'ar al pi darko from Mishlei, or chanukat hamizbeach, or chanukat habayit. So we have here this explicit a comparison between chanukat habayit and the word chinuch. Rashi has made this explicit comparison here. Chinuch is the start of someone on the beginning of a task or a mission that they're going to do. It's more than just practice, though. As Shlomo HaMelech says, Chanoch lena'ar al pi darko. Rashi referred to it. I've brought it in source 15. This is a famous comment of Shlomo HaMelech in Mishlei. Chanoch lena'ar al pi darko. You have to train each child, each child as in your biological child, or each student who you're educating, or each child in your community, etc. Educate each child according to his specific needs. In other words, we have an instruction here. It's incumbent upon each parent or grandparent or teacher to educate each child before them according to their specific needs and their specific strengths, weaknesses, etc., etc. And an educator who can manage to fulfill this task, to really reveal what is this inner spark within each child, can bring this to life and can allow it to flourish, can allow the values again to continue onwards. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch relates the phrase Chanoch le'na'ar al pi darko to Hanukkah in a beautiful, beautiful way, which I want to read with you. I've written in source 16. Israel is the one nation that knows not only the historic Hanukkah, but also a constantly renewed Hanukkah, a reconsecration celebrated over and over again, Chanoch le'na'ar al pi darko, a preparation and consecration for our own future. So our focus is to spread the light from each private home, ner ish or beito, as we said, each person with his household. And if we can light the Hanukkah candles according to the accepted practice of ner ish or beito, our light with our household, reflecting that we are sharing the values and continuing them on from generation to generation. And he continues, Israel began its Hanukkah by kindling the lights of its homes from the light of the temple. But the new ultimate Hanukkah will be attained when the light tended in Israel's homes will triumph, so that they may ignite the light of the temple to become a true everlasting Ner Tamid. So this is really what the celebration of Hanukkah is about, to spread the light of each home, the miracle of the Maccabim in defending the privacy of the Jewish home and in protecting the values from within each home, and allowing us a chance to continue appreciating these values, strengthening them, and passing them on from generation to generation. So have a wonderful rest of Hanukkah. Hanukkah Sameach to everyone.